Today, my conversation with T. Michael O'Connor, the U.S. Marshal for the Southern District of Texas and a fifth-generation Texas rancher.
I said, give us a list of violent, outstanding warrants. And I remember him saying, well, there's thousands of them.
You've seen loss. You've dealt with heartache. You've watched others suffer, and in your words, you see evil. Why keep doing this after 40 years?
Now here's supposedly a cowboy supposed to be a badass. And here I am contemplating. But I decided being a cowboy out there, I'll grow a mustache, and then I failed to maintain it properly. I tried to wax it. I tried to, evenly cut it. One side would be shorter than another, and finally I just said to hell with it. So this is what I have, and my wife that I refer as Madam Marshal has been tolerant for about 40 plus years with it.
40 plus years,
Yeah.
Which is as long as you've been in law enforcement.
Yes, that's exactly right, as long as I've been in law enforcement.
Explain for me the way that you view, and maybe this describes sort of your view here in law enforcement generally, of good versus evil, and how, as you put it, they're evil people in this world, and we're tracking them down.
Well, I can say this, that yes, evil lurks among us, and there are such a thing as demonic people. Most people probably wouldn't believe me about that, but I've seen it firsthand over my 40 years of law enforcement. And, they're predators of the people, and especially the innocents of the people. And I think it's real important for those of us. I went through a lot of human behavioral professional training, so I could not necessarily be an expert, but I got a good knowledge of what evil is and how it lurks. And again, the goodness of people, the everyday people, the empathetic people, these predators of evil, they prey on that. So they know that mankind is heartful, and they all of us are forgiving in some cases and helpful in others. And these predators know that, so they take advantage to their benefit of preying on these individuals. And so that's been my motive, is to champion for those that are not able to champion for themselves.
For those who don't know, the U.S. Marshals tracks down, among other priorities, just the most violent of the criminals out there. And I'm sure people who are watching, some and who listen, will not know much about the U.S. Marshals. Maybe they've learned about it some from a movie. For me, watching The Fugitive with Harrison Ford was my introduction to, the U.S. Marshals. How would you summarize, just briefly, what the priority 2 or 3 are priorities for the U.S. Marshals?
Well, first I'd tell you that we're the best kept secret, and intentionally. The U.S. Marshals are not looking for first billing. We're the assists. We go and take care of business upon request. We usually, at least in the violent fugitive world, it's some outstanding warrant anywhere in the world, in the districts, etc., south of the border, and they call upon us, different jurisdictions, state, federal, and local, tribal, and they ask us, well, you've heard that it's saying you can run but you can't hide. Mm-hmm. That specifically refers to the U.S. Marshals. And then you hear things like justice is coming, and that refers to us. And then eventually, justice is here when we apprehend you.
And we're talking about thousands of these violent criminals across the U.S. every year. I was looking at some of the data. I know this district, the Southern District of Texas, which is all of the Houston area, all the way down to the border. You're busy, but we don't see you usually. And why is that? Why do we not see most of the work that you do?
I think it's because of the culture of the Marshal Service, is that there is no importance about me or we as it is what we do and what we accomplish. We feel it's more important for us to accomplish those things for the people and for the safety and serving them, and then we disappear. It's almost kind of like, I guess, was it the Lone Ranger that would leave his bullet on the table and he's gone? Well, that's kind of like how we view ourselves, and we don't promote ourselves. We go in and we come out. And I practiced this when I was sheriff. I had, tactical teams, and we'd go for major fugitives. And I told them, I said, when we make house calls, we go in the middle of the night like a ghost. We come get you. We take you out, and no one knows what has transpired. Well, we feel the same way. We don't grandstand our situations as we do pursue evil. And that is other than our other responsibility, that is our major focus. And I have very, very dedicated patriots. But what's good is they're transitioning, the majority of them, from a military operations, serving in the military. And so they get it because they had to do this in the military. So it is a unique situation for the military to transition into the public sector, is to come into the Marshal Service and continue to take care of serving the people.
You don't mind not being seen most of the time?
No, not at all. I had my time when I was sheriff in South Texas in Victoria County for 4 terms, and I was always on the front page of something. I seem to have a tendency to get in the middle of things. When I came into and got appointed to the Marshal Service, I told my family, this is where I belong, because I can be behind the scenes and not have to be headline news, but yet be just as effective, if not greater than, in serving in the leadership with the Marshal Service and the men and women that are so dedicated, and they're the silent warriors. I mean, they're the ones out there day in and day out risking their lives, and I support them wholeheartedly.
This means a lot to you. This means a lot to you.
Oh, it's where I belong.
Yeah. Why does it mean so much to you? Why keep doing this after 40 years? It must be difficult and tough, and you've seen loss. You've dealt with heartache. You've watched others suffer, and in your words, you see evil in the world. Why do you keep doing it?
Well, I'd say mostly just growing up as a cowboy, a hard-headed Irishman, being a cowboy out there, determined, to take care of business and be a survivor. Because you're on your own, there's not going to be much assistance in there. And family upbringing. I mean, the family had always said, look, if you have something to offer to the people, then step up. Otherwise, stay quiet. Let someone else do it. And basically, my mentality and my efforts are, look, if you're not taking care of business, get out of the way, because we're going to take care of business. And it's just, I guess you could say it's in my DNA program to serve. As long as they feel I'm worthy and productive as a leader, that's the key thing here in my position now, is to mentor and be a good leader and go and do without any grandstanding aspect. Because it's not about me. It's not about us. It's about the communities, safe communities.
You live in 2 worlds you were describing earlier. You've got the office, real nice. You wear suits sometimes, but then the cowboy hat reminds us, and for those who don't know, your family has owned a ranch here going back to before Texas was a state. I mean, back in the 1830s, when your family owned the ranch when Texas was a country and then became a state. So you're 5th generation. Your son, 6th. You've got a grandson now, 7th.
Yes.
All Thomas, by the way, right? You've got
yeah, the O'Connor Irish aspect is not real creative on the Thomas's first name gets carried year to year.
Congratulations on the grandson, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Also Thomas, number 7. Is that right?
T7. That's correct.
So you grew up as a cowboy. I mean, this is not an exaggeration for people who say, "Oh, you're just wearing the hat." No, I mean, if what I've read is correct, you actually spent your youth on horseback looking, there on the family land to make sure your property and your animals were all safe. Is that right?
That's correct, yes, sir.
I mean, before this interview started, your phone rang, and we joked because I think your ringtone is "I should have been a cowboy." Toby Keith. That's the hat, the mustache. That's not an act. What would you say about coming from that world, and now you spend some time in an office, but there must be some real core advantage to who you are, growing up in that way, and now having this job.
Well, I can tell you that I have been around dignitaries from presidents to prime ministers to CEOs in my younger days, and everybody of that character and that level wants to give you advice. And so you listen wholeheartedly. But the best advice I received was from one of the old cowboys. And I mean, this was an old, rough, tough cowboy in South Texas. And he said, whatever you do, wherever you go, don't forget to ride with your cowboys. And that's my practice. So if I'm at the ranch, I ride with my cowboys. If I'm, in other capacities, sheriff, etc., I ride with my cowboys. So you're talking about this so-called aura. It's because I ride with the cowboys. And I go out in the field, so you've seen some of that, because that's how you stay connected. That's a true leader, is to stay connected with the rank and file. And I did tell the president and also the ones that interviewed me originally that if you want someone to be a desk jockey, I'm the wrong person, because I will be in the field. Maybe it's uncharacteristic, but it's normal for me, and it will continue to be.
What else would you say about leadership now that you've brought it up? I mean, you've known leadership as the sheriff 16 years here in the Houston area, Victoria County, and then, of course, now in your position. What would you say about what people don't understand or get wrong about leadership that you think should be obvious?
Well, I don't say I'm a simple person, but there's 3 aspects that I follow to, and that's connect, communicate, and collaborate. Now, what does that really mean? Connect is what is your mission and your vision. And with that connectivity, you have to buy in. You have to have everyone a part of your agency to buy in on that vision and that mission. Well, it's not real hard to do it with the Marshal Service because they're already connected and they're already buying in. And then the second aspect is you have to communicate with them to be sure that we're on the right track and to listen to them, because they're there every day. I mean, they're the ones out there risking their lives. So for my sake as a leader, I have to support them in every way I can, from the moral aspect to equipment, et cetera, and to be a spokesman, for the Marshal Service in general. And then there's collaboration. We are an assist agency. We do go and help. So you need to communicate with those agencies out there that may not be very aware of our capabilities. And that's where we go and visit with local, state, and federal, and even tribal agency groups and say, hey, look, again, we're that best kept secret. So it's interesting to where we have, in the last 6 years, have resonated some interest, in the general area of the Houston Metroplex and then in South Texas, because unfortunately, evil lurks everywhere. A lot of it you think's in maybe the Houston Metroplex, but no, their portability, organized crime, they're throughout South Texas, and they try to avoid law enforcement, obviously, in smaller communities. Well, now the marshals are there to assist.
Why is that emotional for you?
You have to believe what you do. If you're not passionate of your career, Now here's supposedly a cowboy supposed to be a badass. And here I am contemplating. I do it. Well, I've seen everything, the good, the bad, and the evil. And I think it's critical that as long as I'm able to continue to serve and protect, and you have to be passionate of service or whatever you do, it's essential to be the best leader. And I guess that causes some aspect.
This would be a good time to point out
It's
that you're
personal. I mean, a lot of people think law enforcement doesn't have empathy for people's, tragedy, but I think it is. And so sometimes we go into situations that are horrific, and we have to stay focused. But, when we leave, it does get emotional, and that's why I have to really focus on our men and women in the service to be sure that they are okay after being a part of that.
Is that how you deal with the emotion of it? If I'm hearing you correctly, to turn outward and focus on
Others.
the men and women who,
Yes.
who serve with you.
Yeah, I mean, that helps me.
Your dog helps you too.
Yeah, she's trying.
I saw Izzy come up as soon as you got emotional. Izzy, who's been sitting a few feet away, came up right into your lap.
Yeah. Yep, they sense a lot, the dogs do. And I take her with me time to time, so.
Every day is bring your dog to work day.
You try to, and here a couple of years ago, we do have canines that are U.S. Marshal dogs. So I decided to commission her as a U.S. Marshal. And so everybody that's a special U.S. Marshal, there's an oath. So I decided to give her the oath. Well, I spoke in her behalf, and I had to hold her right paw up as I spoke to her and swearing her in as a U.S. Marshal.
Oh, that's great.
In law enforcement, and you have to have a special sense of humor. But I learned that as a cowboy. It's rough, it's tough, it's not easy street. Law enforcement is the same. And it's not that we're making light of a serious situation. We're just trying to ease up the situation. And so a sense of humor is essential. And if it's about you and you don't have a sense of humor, go somewhere else. You don't belong in the Marshal Service, nor any aspect of law enforcement as far as that's concerned, because it is to serve and to protect.
You've got feelings too. They've got feelings too. You got to have ways that you manage and deal with the intensity of the job. I mean,
True.
You say. You talk about the assistance that you give other agencies. I've heard that here and in press conference. FBI, even including state agencies and local agencies. Seen you with No Ideas, HPD chief. Recently, under the new administration, the U.S. Marshals have new authority, or expanded authority, maybe the best way to describe it, you correct me if I'm wrong, to help in the apprehension of violent criminals who are not U.S. citizens. Now, I know that U.S. Marshals has always gone after fugitives, including from other countries who are here, but describe for me what is new about the expanded authority here.
Well, obviously, it's Title 8, Section 12 or 14, giving us the expanded authority to pursue and apprehend, non-citizens or illegals, as it's referred to. But, it doesn't change us. It really, we have been pursuing them worldwide. And it's all about criminality. Now, I know that even as sheriff, they try to get law enforcement pulled into, the political aspect of immigration and the issues of that. And I always refer back to, wait a minute, law enforcement is an objective perspective, and that we are all about law and order, and that it doesn't matter if you're domestically from the U.S. or a non-citizen, we're coming to get you. no matter what. You commit the crime, as they say, hopefully you'll spend the time, but it hasn't changed anything drastically other than the support. We didn't have the support prior to in the last administration. So you would go and they'd be like a revolving door. We'd bring them, apprehend them, bring them to the magistrates, or that agency would bring them to the magistrates and arraign them, and they're out the door before we got out of the parking lot. I mean, there were cases to where, based on capital murder in the Houston Metroplex, where we went after them 3 times. We apprehended, they got bonded. We apprehended them on the same crime, they got bonded out. We apprehended them and they got bonded. And I told my teams, I said, this is a trifecta, and I'll assure you, be prepared. That person's going to be unwilling to go, and more than likely, it's going to wind up being, a shooting. And sure enough, it's what it turned out, because they know the consequences on, the severity of their conduct. And so that puts our people even at a higher risk of walking into a potential being ambushed, only because of the judicial system figured that they need to let them out.
I'm hearing you say this is a positive change, the expanded authority, and maybe the only difference is that there's always a limited resources. You have tons of violent criminals, and now maybe some who were undocumented are prioritized more, and it's more likely that they actually are deported. Yes. Instead of a revolving door, as you described it.
Well, deported, but if they're criminally charged, we want them to serve the time. Or
serve the time here. I see.
And
yes.
then upon their time, no matter how long it is, then they're deported.
Right. Got it. You, in the assistance that you give to these other agencies, there are some things that you lead. For those who don't know, I mean, you're primarily responsible for the protection of all federal judges here, and prisoners and prisoner transport, and seizing and dealing with assets that are seized from criminals. And then you have the Violent Gang Task Force. Let's see, the name, I got to get it right, the U.S. Marshals Gulf Coast Violent Gang Task Force.
Yeah, close.
I was close? Shoot.
Good enough. The U.S. Marshal has the highest authority in law enforcement across the land. So what I can do as a U.S. Marshal, when we establish a task force, it's usually consisting of state, local, and federal agencies. And depending on the region, so let's say here in Houston, we've gone to the chief of police, and here in Houston, the sheriff, and they've had massive list of, outstanding violent warrants. And so we bring in special operations fully funded by the U.S. Marshals to go and address some of these outstanding violent warrants. And I know I at one time talked to the chief of police, and I said, give us a list of violent outstanding warrants. And I remember him saying, well, there's thousands of them. Wow. And I said, Chief, hone it down. We cannot go after, it would be eternally going after. I said, so give us, your top 200, at least let's start there. And then we'll do the operations, to which we have on multiple occasions, whether it's here or other parts of the district. And that's the key aspect of what a task force is. It's ongoing, whether they're special ops or not. And so we always communicate. And then we have a liaison, let's say, with the sheriff's office or the police department. So if we need to communicate anything with regards to our operations, we have a representative on the task force, which makes it a lot easier. And then it turns into relationships. I mean, that's the key of what we do, is developing professional relationships, that we understand each other, what we do and how we do it.
It sounds like you all play nicely in the sandbox, mostly.
Mostly, I would say mostly, yes, mostly. There's others that may be indifferent, but I think we've kind of proved ourselves that we are capable and we know what we're doing. And so that's why I think so in the 6 years or going on 6, I've had constables contact us and others that have not been a part of the Marshal Service. Yeah. But, action speaks louder than words, and our results are very, nationally, we're probably up in the top tier of results with regard to violent criminals and apprehensions of them.
You're real proud of your team, you can tell. We recently had a couple of, most recently this year, a shooting that involved one of your K-9 units. He's, I understand, doing well. I could tell that affected you. That must be among the hardest moments for you as a leader and in law enforcement. Am I wrong?
Well, as a dog lover, I mean, my canine's at my feet right now. Yeah. But they do their duty, and they don't back off at all. And that circumstances, we had a very evil person, and I mean demonic to nature with the history of this individual, been in prison, out of prison, and, very assaultive, very the wrong person to be in society, to be honest with you. And the fact that we lost a deputy in line of duty there, and of course we then went pursuant, the individual absconded. And for the canines, they're an essential aspect of what we do, and they're more dedicated than we. And when they're focused, they stay focused. To the point of death. And so the dog got in the Rocky, got into the trash container with the individual. And basically he saved the lives of our deputies. Because what happened is he went in and he was after the individual. And the individual was buried way low. Well, of course, he started shooting at Rocky, which in turn turned away from and distracted, I guess you could say distracted from the deputies, and to which they were able to pull Rocky away and then return fire. So.
Amazing story.
Matter of fact, this week we had some operation and he was back.
He's back.
Back on duty. Yeah.
Have you ever had to fire your service weapon?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. You ever been shot at?
I have.
You ever been hit?
No. Fortunately, I being a Catholic, I guess, and St. Michael is the patron saint for military and law enforcement. So I guess St. Michael was hanging around.
How much does your faith inform your perspective in what you do?
You can't be in this business without a strong faith, because you see life, you see death, like I said, you see evil. And we're very close to the nature of a priest or a pastor. I mean, because we're both saving lives, but in a different manner. And I kid with some of the priests and the people, the pastors, that, we're in the same business because we are focused on the people. And one aspect is their soul. Our aspect is their body and soul. In the complete aspect, in saving. And so if you don't have faith, I mean, in anything, your life in general, I feel sorry for you, because it's essential aspect of it, and especially in law enforcement.
As we wind down, I feel like I'd miss something if I didn't ask about your family. I understand Madame Marshal, is that, did I get that right? Has to be 100% committed to be there for 40-something years, also have 2 children, and I believe a grandson.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
What does your family, how do you, I don't know if this question is going to make sense, you tell me, but in all of your responsibilities, it must be, do you try to be, I'm one person when I go to work, and I'm one person at the Cowboy, and I'm one person at home, or you try to be one person, if that makes any sense, and how having your family and being a father and a grandfather, what that means to your service and your work as the U.S. Marshal?
Well, from my perspective, philosophically, I tell all people that I've been a part to law enforcement and have been the leader or responsible for them, it's family first. Yes, it's faith, absolutely, number one, but it's family second, and then your career. And a career is not a job, it's a career. And again, if you see it that way, then go somewhere else and go do something else that you're passionate about. And so, it's real important for family. And I've been with my grown children. I was a part of the little league, coaching. I couldn't stand it because of my nature to sit in the stands, so I decided I better be in the middle of it.
You any good as a coach?
Hell yeah, I was as good as a coach. Yeah, no, and it taught relationships with the children. They understood what my mission was. And I think it was important that they were supportive. When I first determined that, there was a situation with the former sheriff's office that was not the best of operations. And I was part of the SWAT team at that time. And I decided that ethically and morally I could not continue because of the administration. So I, decided I'd leave. But then it was told to me, well, are you going to just walk away? If you got something to offer, then you better do something about it. So I did. And so I gathered my family together, my two children, my wife, and I said, look, I was told that, I should step up to the plate, and I've decided to do that. And I said, I'm going to run for sheriff. And my daughter was in college then, and my son's just starting high school. And they were just immediately supportive. And then my son kind of showed this kind of hesitation. And my daughter caught it and said, what's your problem? What's wrong with you? Oh, he's going to be sheriff all the years I'm in high school. And she laughed and says, yeah, it sure is. But it turned out just fine.
Yeah. What does your grandson think of you as the U.S. Marshal? Or does he see you like that?
Well, he's a little critter. He's only 6 months
Oh,
old.
he's 6 months. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I see. I understand.
He'll do course. I'll educate him and have him a part of it because it's not just law enforcement. It's to serve.
Yeah.
It's something that you need to be a part in your life. Making a difference. And there's all aspects, yourself included. Look what you're doing in serving the people. You're bringing light to certain things that I surely wouldn't be highlighting, but I'm willing to represent the Marshal Service and say, hey, these are good people, and they need to be supported as much as they can when they can.
Thank you. My final question. Knowing what you know about law enforcement and life and leadership, over the last 40-something years since you first joined as a deputy, and looking at your grandson, 6 months old, what are your hopes for him? You've seen how the world changed. You have your own beliefs about what stayed the same. What if he listens to this in 10 years, what advice do you want him to sink in and you want him to internalize?
Well, I hope he will look and see that I was part of the result of safe communities. I mean, I think we're well suited with this administration now to take the cuffs off of us and let us go and fight evil and make these communities safe no matter where you live in the community. There's a lot of innocents, everyday workers out there, and they deserve protection in safe communities just like anybody else. So as, years later, to which he would take a look at this, he would say, he did all right. Yeah. Yeah, when you talk about family, a lot of times that's where I have to hesitate. Because, it's like me being sheriff. 10 years from now, they won't know who the hell the sheriff was. They won't know who the hell the marshal was. But, at least if we leave it in the right community for generations. We only do this for generations forthcoming. And hopefully some of them will carry out make that difference as well. And that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to get the next generations to believe and don't have hesitation to be in a career like this.
Thank you, Marshal O'Connor, for your time. And thank you, Izzy, for being here.
All right. I thank you.